welcome back to the show. We are back with another episode talking about true sky, specifically lived experiences with our just embodiment of Western and true sky astrologies. We're going to be speaking to Jess's experience today. We're both very excited to dive into this. And Jess, as you may or may not know, is a Sagittarius Sun in Western astrology. She turns to a Scorpio Sun in true sky. So we are going to talk about really her experience as a Sagittarius Sun in Western and then moving into her true sky placement as a Scorpio Sun. And we're also going to talk about other kind of epiphanies that she's had in terms of the comparison between her charts and just kind of dive into this intuitively. This is just to bring you along in our lived experience as we're exploring this form of astrology. So we're going to get started with Jess's thoughts on her North and South Node axis between the two different placements that she has highlighted in her Western chart versus her tropical chart.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Lil. Okay, so for those listening, I really wanted to start with the South Node and the North Node in both my tropical chart and my true sky chart. So South Node in every chart, the South Node is kind of like where we come from. It's our roots, it's our past. It can also indicate past lives, but if you're not, a believer in past lives, then it can really just represent earlier on in childhood, which is actually what I'm going to speak on today. I do believe in past lives, but I'm just going to speak on earlier childhood experiences. And then our North Node is what we're meant to grow into in this life, in this incarnation. And our North Node for everyone, the sign that it's in represents like the qualities that we're meant to grow into, and it indicates a lot of like what our life path, what our purpose is outside of career, just our purpose in being on this planet, this earth plane. And also it's like really uncomfortable for us. It's what stretches us. So I just wanted to preface that before going into this. So I want to dive into my South Node in Gemini and my North Node in Sagittarius, which is my tropical placements. And this is something that I've like shared with Lily. I'm like, I don't know, a part of me still feels resonant with my North Node in Sagittarius, but after reflecting on this even more, we'll get there. There's Sagittarius, I feel like, is showing up differently for me, and that's actually represented through my true sky chart, which is crazy. So with the South Node in Gemini, that there's so much I could go into here, but it really speaks to someone like in childhood who was like really comfortable where they grew up, really comfortable in their hometown, really feeling a sense of community in their hometown, and like really just has a tendency to like not want to leave, especially later on in life. And then they grow into eventually at some point in life with a North Node in Sagittarius, they're like meant to move into leaving the home, leaving the roots behind, and like expanding and seeing the world. Sagittarius is like the world traveler, okay? And this is very broad. There's so much more that I could go into. But I was like feeling into this interpretation around it, and I was like, that is so not me, because first of all, my South Node in Gemini, or my childhood rather, I did not feel comfortable in my hometown. Was I sheltered? Absolutely. And do I feel like I didn't have a worldly view? Yes. So I definitely resonate with that aspect of South Node in Gemini, but I literally left. I went to college on the other side of the state, and I literally left Washington the second I graduated from college, and I moved by myself to California. I was 22 at the time. I moved with no friends, no family. That was actually really hard on me, but I wasn't afraid to do it. Like I remember I wanted to do it. I was like, it's like my soul was like craving getting out of Washington. And since then I've actually lived in 4 states. Like I'm on my 4th state now. And I was like reflecting on it, and I was like, this is so interesting because moving for me has never felt like it's never felt uncomfortable. It's almost like my soul craves it I don't know, it just lets me know when I'm ready to move. And that was what happened. It's funny because so many people ask me why I moved to Texas, and I'm always just like, I just wanted to. And they're like, "Oh, like nothing made you move here?" And I'm like, "No. I just wanted to leave where I was." And they're just like, "Oh." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is so Sagittarius moon." Because for those listening, I am a Sagittarius moon in True Sky. So we're going to get into that. I'm a Capricorn moon in tropical, but I'm a Sagittarius moon in True Sky. And basically what that means is our moon placement is like what nourishes us. And what nourishes me is moving. Like every few years I've moved. And that has always been, that is such a Sagittarius energy. And so I just thought that that was so interesting. Like, as I was reflecting on that, as I was reflecting on my childhood, I was like, wow, this is so representative of actually like my Sagittarius moon, because I've been really reflecting on my moon sign and how it relates to Sagittarius energy, and have been talking to Lily. I'm like, I am so not a world traveler though. Like, I'm not a travel bunny, as Lily puts it. And this is so funny because I like to travel, but with purpose. I'm not someone who just like is going to go see the world. Like, I'm not a nomad. I am way too high maintenance for that shit. Like, not a nomad. And that's also tends to be a very like Sagittarian thing, is to be like nomadic and very free spirited. And like, that just ain't me. Okay. But also that's represented like with my fourth house, or with my sun in the fourth house. The fourth house is like the home, the roots. And so I really do also crave this like sense of security. And especially since I turned 30, I was telling Lily, I'm like in this nesting phase. So it's like balancing that is what I've realized. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, okay, I like to travel with purpose, which we're going to talk about later. But I also have to have that sense of security. But also, I'm like so not afraid to just like up and move my life. And that has really been something that has just been so prominent for me ever since I was younger.
Okay, I'm loving all of this. I have a couple of questions. Number one, for your South Node, did you say what house that was in? I'm not sure if I caught that.
So yeah, I didn't. Thank you for bringing that up. My South Node in both systems is in the 10th house, and my North Node is in the 4th house. So 10th house is career and public image, and 4th house is home, what I just mentioned, home. It's a soul house. It's like home, family, but also like diving deep into the self. Ancestry is really big in the 4th house. And so with my sun and my North Node there, those are all energies and themes of in my life that I'm really meant to lean into. And it's really with that specific axis, it's about finding a balance between work and home life. Because with South Node in the 10th house tends to indicate over like a past life of overworking or just caring too much about public image. But it's also represented in my South Node in Taurus, which is in my True Sky chart.
Okay. Okay, so I think this is very interesting. I'm just seeing a parallel between our charts because ours are actually flip-flops. So my South Node is in the 4th house and my North Node is in the 10th. So that's kind of interesting in terms of like just our dynamic and who we attract into our life. I always think that's kind of interesting looking at friends' charts and like seeing how they're like teaching you things that you need to know. So anyway, just a little side note there. Secondly, I love how you are reworking this Sagittarius energy. I think that is so interesting about the travel. And you're right, there is such a different energy between that free spirited kind of wanting to see the world, this kind of like setting out with a knapsack, like that kind of idea. Like there's a very different energy between that versus what you've done, which is this like intentional movement for fresh energy. And that's something that we've talked about, Jess and I, off camera, is that Jess doesn't really embody this kind of like free spirited type of Sagittarius energy, but she does have very embodied aspects of Sagittarius within the way that she lives her life. It's just that part of Sagittarius is not really represented in you, as at least in what I see. And so I think this is really interesting, and it's so cool how the placement of the sign indicates its expression for the individual. Because for me, I have a Sagittarius rising, and I'm much more of like a knapsack, like put on my knapsack. And
Yeah.
I have more of that free-spirited kind of energy about me. So it's so interesting how it can filter just based on the placement in the chart, and I assume also its aspects to other things within the chart, how it's playing off of other planets.
Oh, for sure. Like literally, could you imagine me with a knapsack?
No, I could not. I
That is
could not.
literally not me, not me at all. But it's so interesting because I'm like realizing more and more how much my sun sign in the fourth house has been like so prominent throughout my life, because with the sun in the fourth, it's like I'm really meant to have a home base still, have a sense of security. And I've always felt that, like, even within moving, I'm like, okay, but I need to establish, like, where's my home? Like, where am I going to live? Making it feel comfortable to me. And so even my sun sign has always come through, or my placement rather in the fourth house has always come through to really like balance that out. And I'm just like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And then also, this just speaks to like, if you have certain placements in your chart and you don't resonate with certain aspects of that sign, like that's okay. And I think that that's really important to allow yourself to be in that non-resonance, because like this is something Lily and I have talked about with astrology, is it's so easy to try to like fit yourself into the mold of whatever your certain signs and placements are. And it's like that's just, I feel like we've said this before, but that's really not how we use astrology. We really like to look at it as like, how is this manifested in my life, and how am I embodying this? And then from that standpoint, you can look at, okay, like now what feels more resonant for me to step deeper into in my embodiment. And so I think that that's just a really empowering way to use this tool.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback on that, there also doesn't have to be an explanation. If there is a part of the energy of a sign that you have in your chart that you just don't resonate with, there actually doesn't have to be an explanation. And maybe that will reveal itself later on, but I think it's really cool to thread all of this together and to really see it. But at the same time, there is this piece of just inner trust that I think can kind of unlock the understanding, like logically the understanding later on down the road. So this is always an unfolding process. So I love how you shared that, Jess. So, okay, so we talked a little bit about North Node, South Node. Is there anything else that you feel like you want to mention about those two placements specifically?
Yeah, well, I want to talk about my North Node, South Node in my True Sky chart really quick. So in True Sky, my North Node and my South Node is in Taurus, and my North Node is in Ophiuchus. And Ophiuchus has a very similar energy to Scorpio, so I am going to kind of like blend those energies a little bit. But with South Node and Taurus, this really speaks to someone who, like earlier on in life, overworked, someone who's very comfortable on the material plane, very comfortable enjoying and indulging in life's luxuries. And this is so interesting because my childhood, I grew up very comfortable. Like my dad had a really, really great job. Him and my mom, my dad is a true Sagittarius. So him and my mom would take us on these amazing vacations. Like seeing my dad on vacation is like next level Sagittarius. Like he is like, you want to be around him when he's on vacation. He is like so magnetic. Okay, that's just a side note. But anyways, he took us on these amazing vacations growing up. Like we were so blessed, right? And we got to go to different countries, like, and we did it so right. Like it was so so South Node and Taurus, like just really like enjoying in life, enjoying in the luxuries. And I was like, oh my God, like, that was my childhood. Like I was able to enjoy in that, but also in my childhood was working. My dad, he was like, the second I turned 16, he was like, it's time for you to get a job. It's time for you to learn the meaning of a dollar. And so literally from the age 16 on, I've always had a job. And I always have fell into this like overworking pattern. Um, and that was something that was like deeply ingrained in me, was like working, climbing the corporate ladder, like becoming a successful businesswoman. That was literally like all I wanted to do when I was like in high school and college. I was like, I just want to climb the corporate ladder and like have a really successful job. That's all I care about. I don't care about having kids. I don't care about family, whatever. Like, it's all I care about. And that's very South Node in Taurus. And so it's just really interesting because like even after college I worked in hospitality, and hospitality, if you know, it's a hard industry. You work a lot. And so that was so representative in my South Node in Taurus. And then moving into my North Node in Ophiuchus, like, oh, it's just crazy to me how much like life has knocked me on this path, because North Node in like Scorpio / Ophiuchus, I'm going to say, just so it's like a little more digestible, since Ophiuchus isn't the most familiar energy and they're very blendable. It's like leaning into the mysterious side of life, also leaning more into spirituality, leaning more into the unknown, like, and specifically when it comes to money, like having money come in more expansive ways, like less traditional 9 to 5 working a corporate job way. Like that is so North Node in Ophiuchus or even Sag or Scorpio. And so I was just reflecting on this, and I was like, this has literally been my life for like the past 5 years, because I went from always being provided for to always providing for myself to then being my own boss, not having a consistent paycheck at all, honestly struggling with money, which forced me to lean into my spirituality, caused me to honestly have a spiritual awakening, like literally pushed me into that more magical, mystical side of life. And it's so interesting because like more and more I feel like I'm diving into like fantasy. Like I'm obsessed with Harry Potter right now. Was never obsessed with it growing up. I was always like more practical, which is like that earth energy. And now I'm like, give me all the fantasy, all the fiction. All I want to do is study astrology. Like I want to be in the stars. Sometimes I literally want to be transported into Harry Potter so that I can like live like, and I'm just like, this is so crazy. And there's so many other ways in which it's manifested in my life, but that's really, and I'm still, it's uncomfortable for me. It's uncomfortable for me to step into the unknown. And I really feel like life is pushing me to, especially in my career, it's pushing me to lean into ways of making money and operating that like come more from my feminine, which Ophiuchus is all about the divine feminine, which is something that I really, throughout my life, I really pushed away. And how to really allow myself to expand in ways that are mystical and just like not the norm. And so that's been really interesting, and I'm like still so in that, and it's so uncomfortable for me. So that's just where I feel like, wow, this is like so representative of like who I truly am and like just where I'm at in my life right now. And that's really how I feel about my True Sky chart is it's like this next level of me.
Okay, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. We are loving this. I can just tell the listeners are loving this. And yeah, I mean, Ophiuchus is a whole, I feel like it's just like a whole can of worms for
Mhm.
people. And I have predominant Ophiuchus placements and I don't really understand the energy yet, you know? So I really like how you kind of attribute it to Scorpio for kind of ease of listening right now. And again, you know, that's just another one of those things that we're exploring is what is Ophiuchus? What is the energy? And so, yeah, I really love how you were kind of able to share that South Node in Taurus. Very interesting. And I actually have never heard you talk about it before. Like we haven't touched on this outside of recording. So that was really interesting for me to hear in terms of like your childhood experience, because that does feel very Taurusy to me, like the luxury and the steadiness and the yeah, that groundedness, that reliability. I have people in my life who have a lot of really strong Taurus placements and Taurus Western placements, but they change a little bit in True Sky. So that's been kind of an interesting thing for me, like seeing where their Taurus shines through. But growing up with a lot of Taurusy Western astrology people in my life, like I feel like I'm pretty familiar with that energy, at least how it shows up from a Western astrology lens. So I love that for you. And I do think that you kind of hold some, it's interesting too, because thinking about it from the South Node into the North Node, I think that from what you've told me, from what I've learned, we sometimes can use some of the gifts or some of the values of the South Node to move towards the North Node. And I do see your value around, I wouldn't say luxury, but like you hold a lot of value in terms of like having a like the steadiness, of the
Mhm.
home life, but also like the quality of things. And doesn't necessarily mean that it's luxurious, but like it is, there's like a nice quality to things. And that's like a very Taurus quality, I think, like really wanting the things in their life to be high caliber and worth it in a way. So I wonder, like, do you feel as though you've had some of that South Node kind of gift help you in terms of like moving into your North Node? Do you think it flavors it at all, or does it feel like it's very much only the North Node that you're really moving towards at this point?
No, thank you. That's a great question. I do think it flavors it for sure, because I at the same time I am someone who, like, I'm very dependable. I'm very like I really crave stability in a lot of ways, which I've kind of mentioned from my North Node or my Sun in the fourth house. It kind of comes through there, but I also have my midheaven, which is representative of career in Taurus, which is really interesting because it's like that South Node energy, but I really feel like I have instilled in me this like really, when it's aligned, especially this really beautiful work ethic. I'm very, very like consistent. I'm very good at like hitting deadlines. I'm very good at getting things done. I'm very good at staying on schedule. And I really do think that that is like the South Node gift of Taurus. And I think that that's something that I'm actually going to be able to bring into my career in Taurus. And I'm actually learning more and more that I'm like, oh, like I can get that, with my North Node in Ophiuchus, it's like so just like blast off into space. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can actually get some of that like groundedness through my career, which is like totally what I need, like balance of, because I have that South Node energy. Like there is like, I come from there. Like there's always a part of me that's going to be like, I need 2 feet on the ground. Like I need consistency. And yeah, I love luxury. Like this is something Lily and I have talked about. It's interesting. I love luxury from a point of like the senses. Like I love really nice food. I love having really good, like going out to eat and really enjoying great experiences. And then like in my home, like things that make me feel comfortable and like they don't have to be expensive, but my taste just gravitates towards like nicer things when it comes to the home. And that I've really come into like, okay, this isn't me being materialistic, because at the same time, like I am not the girl that's going to go buy like a designer handbag or like designer clothes. Like I don't vibe with any of that. So it's really interesting. It's like really from the senses standpoint, like indulging when it comes to like taste and feeling and like my environment. That's what really matters to me.
Okay, I love that because I have seen that in you big time. Like there are certain things that it's like your taste is like really attuned to that, but there are other things that you're like, that's not really like I don't need the best quality there. Like
Mhm.
that's okay. But there are other things that I can tell, and it really does seem to be like your home environment where you have this kind of like selectivity and want for things to be of like a really good quality and really like attuned to you. It's like very feminine, very feminine. And I love that for you because it's helped me. It's honestly been helpful for me as well because this is something that I've kind of been working through in myself, is allowing myself to kind of enjoy those things as well. And there's something to be said for like really allowing the body to be comfortable. And that is and I have my Venus in Taurus. And
Mm.
so I share that with you. Like I share that. And I also have a love for quality for sure. Like I have a love for quality. And yeah, like it feels so expansive and opening the way that you have curated your home space to be comfortable for yourself. And it feels like a really expansive energy. And so I am also like learning from you in that way. And I love that. I love that. So the Taurus energy I think is like so I think it's so juicy. There's like so much to Taurus, I think. And I only have the Venus placement there, so it's not like a huge energy in my chart, but not to mention you've actually told me that it's the sign of Mother Earth. It's like Mother
Mhm.
Earth's sign. So I think that that's also really interesting. And something that I've been thinking about your midheaven in Taurus and your true sky chart is that I wonder if that kind of luxuriousness, that consistency, like those kinds of like the consistency as the gift and the luxury as kind of the taste will kind of form how your career looks. Because I think another huge misconception probably in the space is that if you have like a south node in the 10th house, like you can't have a career. Like that I don't I personally don't agree with that. I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your thoughts on that because it's interesting for you because you have the south node there, but you also have your midheaven. So there's a lot there for you. I wonder, is there anything that you want to share around that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because that was actually something that I was grappling with when I first learned my placement, my South Node North Node placement, because they're in the same house in tropical. They're in the same houses as they are in True Sky. But yeah, I when I first learned this, I was like, oh my God. So I'm just like not supposed to work. And it's really interesting because this has like really played out in my life to where I overworked so much to the point that I burnt myself out, to the point where I had to take time off of work completely, only to find that that is not in alignment for me either. And so now I'm in this place where I'm finding balance between the two. And I'm still finding that balance. However, what I know is that I have to have a job that or a work life, a career that still feels nourishing to me in a way that's not like too rigid. Like, yes, there's that consistency, but it doesn't take away from my home life, if that makes sense. And so that's something that I'm really still stepping into. I'm really still discovering that for myself. But yes, it totally does not mean that you cannot work. And it's just like really interesting how it's been like a pendulum swing in my life, of how I've gone from like overworking, always, just constantly working. I mean, I literally like had 2 jobs in college. I've just always been that way, to just like a period in my life of not working at all. And then now I'm like, okay, whew, I need to find the balance. And so, yeah, for anyone that has those placements, in those houses, at least, it's about you finding what that balance is for you. And your other placements are totally going to flavor that. Because, like, for me, having Sun in the 4th house and North Node in the 4th house, that makes it even like more prominent for me to, I mean, like, literally Sun and North Node, hello, those are both like literally your purpose in life is like your Sun and your North Node. And mine are both in the 4th house. That's like a home, being a mother even, and that's something we'll talk about that on a different time, but that's something that I've, contemplated, is like, what is that motherhood going to look like for me? But it's like really even flavoring like the balance of that even more. And so yeah, I'm still in that, but definitely is not by any means having the south node there does not mean that you can't work or that you shouldn't work at all.
I love this conversation because we haven't ever talked about Taurus on the podcast before. And so if you are a Taurus placement, I hope that you got something from this. But something that I've been feeling just for you around, career, something that I think would be really interesting to explore is like this sensualness of your work. Like
Mhm.
the work that you do feeling really sensual, feeling like there is a steadiness to it, but also like Taurus to me is like very, I don't know if like boundaried is the right word, but just very like practical and like knows, okay, this is doable and this is not doable. And I am totally okay with that. Like there is kind of like a queen energy to that. I believe, I feel. So having like that sensual piece, I think would be really nourishing for you. And I'm just really excited to see like how things, you know, continue to develop in terms of that aspect of your life. So amazing. Let's move on to some of your other placements. So you have your sun in your Western chart in Sagittarius, but you now, with this new system that we found, it's not new, but it's new to us. You are now a Scorpio sun. So what I really want to know is, what does that feel like for you? What has that initiated for you? What has that brought up for you? Because as we've touched on, these things can hit us kind of hard sometimes, especially when you are really into astrology, like we both are, and have utilized the system for quite some time. So bring us along. Tell us how it's felt to be a Scorpio sun.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I should say that like when I learned I was a Scorpio in this system, something hit me so viscerally in my body. Like it was like whoosh, and it was just like truth. And I really felt it so so deeply. And that was something that's just like also so Scorpio. Like Scorpios feel very deeply. They're very intense. And so I don't know, once I learned this, I had always like omitted Scorpio. I never really explored that energy because I was like, oh, I'm a Sagittarius sun. And I only had like one placement in Scorpio in my tropical chart, but I never really explored it until I learned my true sky. And as I started to like explore it and like get familiar with it, I was like, whoa, like this is so me. And it's just like Scorpio is so all about like going really into like the depths of things, like not being afraid to like go there. And that is me. Like if you know me, I like to go there. I actually have to like stop myself from asking people uncomfortable questions a lot of the times because I'm like, can you just tell me? Like, I'm literally like, yeah, tell me everything about your sex life. Like, I want to know everything. And like, other people are not like that. Okay, that's like very Scorpio. Scorpio loves to talk about things that are like kind of taboo. Kind of like into the occult is something that's very commonly said, but and like mysterious subjects, it's so embodied of like how much I'm diving into astrology as of the last 2 years. That's like just like so Scorpio is just really diving into the mystical side of life and and the mystery, like really engulfing, like indulging, I should say, in the mystery of life. And I think that that's definitely something that I've like really allowed myself to lean more into, is that unknown energy. But not only that, like Scorpio is all about transformation. It's like the death and rebirth energy. And this has been, oh my gosh, just something that I've really struggled with in my life. Is I'm also a manifesting generator in human design, but I I completely transform, like, I don't know, every few years or so, and it happens very naturally for me. Like I get super super deep, passionate, intense into certain topics, and I like morph my life to that, and then I get what I need out of it, and then I let it go. And then I'm like on to the next thing. It's very manifesting generator, but it is also very Scorpio. Like Scorpio is very much so here, especially as a Scorpio sun, because our sun placement is like speaks a lot to how we're meant to be seen in the world, how we're meant to shine. And so it's like learning that this was my Scorpio sun was like, I was like, oh my God, the world is meant to see me transform. The world is meant to see me go through. It's like a snake shedding its skin, and the world is meant to see me in that. And that is something, like learning that was so honestly validating for me. And it was just like, because that's something that I've always been very self-conscious of, is like, well, what are people going to think? Like I used to be way into this, now I'm like way into this. And it's like I have truly, if you've known me for a long time, you've known every version of Jess, and there have been like probably about 5 at this point, which is a lot for only being 31 years old. And I'm talking like completely different versions of myself. Not just like slightly changing, like completely different versions. Like it's very dramatic. That is very Scorpio. I'm also a dramatic person. Like, I don't know, the way I talk, like I'm very dramatic. I'm very like expressive. Like that's very Scorpio. It's just I'm into the drama, but not like not I mean a shadow side of Scorpio is like gossip and stuff like that, which I can definitely like fall into that if I'm not careful, but it's definitely something that I'm actually like that I would say that was earlier on in my life. I'm much more like no, it's more about going deep into the things that I care about and things that are going to help people. And that's what I love. Surface level conversations, like I feel like my Sagittarius moon can kind of handle that a little bit, but like it's just like not for me. And I don't have any relationships in my life that are like surface level, like all of my relationships, like I'm very much a quality, not quantity person. And I always have been. And that's very representative of Scorpio. And I just feel like too, like the last thing I'll say is that Scorpio is a water energy. And water is really, I feel like in these past few years I've really come into my emotions. I've really come into like crying. I've really come into allowing myself to like release in that way. And I really feel like it's not as uncomfortable for me now, but it was really uncomfortable for me. And I still feel like I'm connecting to the energy of water. And I think that that's definitely something that's like guiding me on my path. And it's so interesting because, our sun sign, one aspect of it is that like we're meant to grow into it too. So if there are elements of your sun sign that you like don't feel super comfortable with, that's normal. And for me, it is that element of water, of like being in flow, of tapping into my intuition. Like I feel like I have intuitive gifts that I haven't like fully tapped into because it makes me uncomfortable. Like, and there are things that like I've had experiences around my intuition that I'm like, holy shit, like, did that just happen? Like, what was that? And that's something I'm still exploring and still diving into. And so I really feel that though with like my Scorpio sun. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm stepping into her. Like, I feel like that it's like my next level of Jess is that deep, very feminine. Like Scorpio is so feminine and like not afraid to be like dark, and like shadow work has been a huge part of my life, and like really learning how to integrate into like my shadows, integrating them. That's been huge. And that's also speaks to North Node and Ophiuchus. But yeah, I feel like there's so much more I can say, but I'm really feeling connected more and more to like my Scorpio energy for sure.
I am like getting teary. If you're watching the recording, you can tell because it is so true. The embodiment piece for you with Scorpio has been so palpable for me to see. And as I haven't known you for so many years, I always kind of saw you this way. And so it feels like such a homecoming to see you dive into it, because it's like what I've seen. That's what I see. That's what I've always seen as Jess. So, wow. Okay, so can you share with us a couple of different versions of yourself that you feel maybe comfortable sharing?
Oh my gosh, yes. Shout out to my best friend Emily, because like she's the one who's known every version of me. We've been best friends since 5th grade. So if you're listening, Em, you know. Okay. So in, my younger years, I was just totally like not into health at all. Like as a teenager, I was like junk food, like literally would eat whatever, did not do any form of exercise, like had no cognizance of like health, didn't even care about it at all. Okay. And then in like my early 20s and honestly early 20s and high school, I was like a big party girl. That was me. Party girl Jess. That's what I was known as. So again, not into health at all. And it's really funny because then when I was about 25, I was still like in that party girl phase. I was also in that like corporate work life phase. But that's when I started stepping into health and wellness and completely transformed my diet, but became obsessed. Like literally left my job to go back, my corporate job that I had just gotten promoted at, left it to go back to school for holistic nutrition and start my career over. Literally everyone in my life was like, "You're going back to school for what?" Because they were like so used to me being hungover on the weekends, eating pizza dipped in ranch. Like, I'm telling you, it was bad. Okay. And so it was so funny because like it was just like the people that were closest to me could not like believe their eyes. And then I came into this health craze. Like I was very much so obsessed and passionate, though, very passionate, which is so Scorpio as well. About living a healthy lifestyle, and that's how I wanted to help other people. And then I was also like a yoga instructor. That was a huge part of my life, was teaching yoga. Then I gravitated out of that and letting go of the yoga teaching, because that was something that honestly I had built up such a great community around that, and it was like, why would you let that go? But I was like, it's just not me anymore. Like I just can't, I don't know, I just can't keep doing it. And it's so funny because I was talking to my partner the other day and I was like, I always forget that I was a yoga teacher. And I was like, it's so crazy to me though, because like it was such a huge part of my life. Like I taught yoga for 6 years and it became so prominent. Like, I mean, it was huge for me. And it feels like lifetimes ago. And it wasn't, and so it's just very embodied of, I've let that go. I've let, holistic nutrition go in a sense of like, I still eat very healthy, but like it's not my obsession and my passion anymore. And now I've moved into this, like, I feel like I was very much so on that more 3D health, in that more 3D health field. And now I'm like I've transitioned into like more of like the spiritual metaphysical space. And so, yeah, it's just, there's like more, but those are like the main facets of just like how I've transformed and changed.
Wow. Thank you for that. I feel like a big part of your shadow work is bringing all of those, just like, thank you to like each one of those versions of you. I feel that really palpably for you. And there's like a celebration of each one of those metamorphoses. I don't know how to say that word, but each one of those rebirths, I feel like is really important for you to fully acknowledge and also to, like celebrate in a way, like it, because it really is, every time you rebirth, you are becoming more of yourself. And it's almost as though it's like all a culmination, like even though you're completely letting go of something, like there's still energetically, there's an imprint. And it's like every time that you incorporate a new version of yourself and embody it and then let it go, there's still an imprint. Like I feel that like there's still an energetic imprint for you. And that is something huge to celebrate, because that can be something that's really challenging for a lot of people to allow themselves to do. And so I just wanted to say that I think that that's a really potent, palpable thing that you can be really proud of yourself for. I don't know why I'm really feeling that for you. So thank you for sharing all of those like specifics, because that's really interesting. I mean, I knew some of them just from our conversations, but it was great to kind of hear them a little bit more fleshed out. Okay, how are you feeling? Are you ready to kind of move on to a different thing, or would you like to keep talking about Scorpio?
No, I'm ready to move on. But one thing I will say is, first of all, thank you for that reflection, because I've actually, like I mentioned this before, is I've really struggled with that piece of myself, that like really intense death rebirth piece of myself. And one time I was like so frustrated, like when I had just let go of holistic nutrition, I was crying and I was like, I don't understand why I always do this. Why do I always go so deep and so intense into things? And then suddenly it's like a switch. I'm just like, okay, I'm done. And I received this like really beautiful message from an intuitive that like I really trust. And she was like, your guides are just saying like it's all for a reason, and every single you're going to take something from every single piece of every aspect of every phase of your life, and you will find out why. And I was just like and what receiving that was like so just like, and like it was very reflected in like the reflection that you just gave me. So just want to say thank you for that, because I feel like I can never hear it enough.
Yeah, yeah, that was totally coming through strong. Like that it is, even though you're letting it go, like it's still leaving an imprint. And
Yeah.
there's still, it's like you're not you're not taking the suitcase with you. It's like, it's the internal stuff, you know? Like it's the knowings, it's the experience. And yeah, like there's something really strong, I feel, for you around really celebrating each one of those things. And like maybe if you haven't celebrated them, you could still. I think it'd be worth it. But yeah, oh, I love this. I love this. And I really want to keep talking about your true sky chart. I just really feel like your energy just wants to go there. So I just kind of want to say this for the listeners, you know, through this process of bringing true sky to you, we have opened up the space for this contemplation of Western and true sky. But there is no reason and no way that we are going to force anything to be true in any given moment. And right now, what I feel really palpably for Jess, and what I think she's feeling too, is that her energy really wants to go into true sky right now.
Mhm.
And I want to voice that, because although we have a really open mindset, we are also devoted to our intuitive process. And so we're just going to go there, and we're just going to dive right into true sky. And if there's anything else around your chart, Jess, that you feel really called to share around placements, I think this would be a great time to do that. And then we can kind of see where anything needs to go in terms of tying up loose ends around experiences.
Yeah, you're so right, because I just feel like I think about it more and more, and I'm just like, my true sky chart is just a reflection of like what I'm stepping into right now. And that's why I found it. And it's in so many different ways. Um, but I don't know. I think the last thing that I really want to speak on is just like my Sagittarius in the fifth house, and how I have one of my hobbies, and how that's brought like my romantic partner into my life, and how that's just manifested like so literally.
Oh my
Um
gosh. Yes. So, yeah, the moon placement, that's what you're talking about. Okay,
Mhm.
so yeah, Jess has a Sagittarius moon in her fifth house, and it's been amazing for me to see this, because I have got to like come to Jess in her life and just like see her and get to know some of her, I'm giving it away, but some of her dance friends, and also her partner. And seeing kind of the cultural conglomeration that surrounds her is so crazy. We were celebrating her birthday, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna say this. Like, I have never been around this many culturally diverse people in my entire life. And like, I'm not afraid to say that. It's true. Like, I don't, that's just my reality, you know? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the fact that I could tell, like, wow, this is like a melting pot. Like, this is like, there's so many cultures, there's so many diverse viewpoints because of the diverse cultures. And you know, for me, that's something that I've never really been deeply exposed to. Although I will say, my uh college experience, I lived with a couple girls who were Norwegian, and that was really really fun for me. I got to like learn all about their culture and visit them. But you know, so I, again, like, I have a Sagittarius some Sagittarius stuff going on too. But for Jess, I could just feel it so palpably, and like it just felt like it was really like uplifting her, and there was so much fun surrounding it and so much kind of like energy and lightness, which again I think really speaks to the moon placement in general from what you've told me, that it really is like this nourishing kind of like fun energy. And that's something I learned from Jess. So I can't wait for you to speak on this more, because I think this is so interesting about you, and just such a core part of how I know you, really, and what you've shared with me about your life. So I think I just can't wait for you to share it with listeners too.
Yeah, thank you for that too, because it's interesting because the people that are listening, a lot of them are going to be like, they had no idea about about all of this aspect of my life, because the moon placement is often only seen by the people that are like closest to you in your life. It's not like your sun sign where it's like people who don't know you that well. You know, your sun sign is like everybody like sees you in that way, not just people who are closest to you. But moon sign is like people who are closest to you, they're really the ones that get to see your moon sign. And so that's what's been so interesting in how this has played out, because with having a Sagittarius moon in True Sky, you know, for those listening, my main hobby that I never post about on Instagram, like it's very much so like my inner life. I feel like it's just like for me, like I always say this hobby is for me and that's all I care about, is a type of dancing called Brazilian Zouk dancing. It's a partner dance. It comes from Brazil. And it attracts so many, like Lily said, it's like a melting pot. It attracts so many different cultures. And it has brought so many different cultures into my life, including my partner. And that is actually how we met. And so it's really interesting because like Lily, like, you know, I grew up in a predominantly white, a Caucasian, you know, place in the United States. I was not exposed to many cultures. And ever since dancing Brazilian Zouk, literally all of my friends are from a different, they're like a different nationality. Okay. They're, um, which is so cool. And just, this has been my journey over the past like 2 years. And it's just been really interesting because it is so nourishing to me to like learn different cultures and to see different cultures. And like my partner is from a third world country, and like he immigrated here, and just learning about his journey and about his life and how drastically different it was from mine growing up. It's been so just eye-opening, but also just like, wow. I don't know, just there's something about it to me that I just find so beautiful. And like the cultural aspect is so beautiful. And I was telling my partner this the other day. I was like, I feel like more and more I'm really craving being like, when I see people who are, or like some of my friends that I have who are really connected to their cultural roots, I'm like, oh, that is just like so beautiful. And like they express it usually through the food that they cook or like speaking their language. And I don't know, it's just like something that is, it's a really, really big part of my life. Brazilian Zouk, it's huge. Like, and it's not something that a lot of people know. And it is very much so like all of my friends are from different cultures and backgrounds. And so it's been just so interesting to see that. And it's been really fun. And like, I really enjoy it. And that's where the moon sign comes in, I feel like, because it does nourish me. And also I have my Venus sign there. And Venus is the planet of love and values. And so it's literally, this is wild. When I was first studying astrology, they were like, "Oh yeah, if you're like trying to call in love, you can look to where your Venus sign is placed, and like the house that it's in can indicate, and of course the sign can indicate like maybe how you could explore calling in a romantic partner, right?" And they were like, "Yeah, so in the 5th house, this often speaks to Venus in the 5th house often speaks to potentially finding your romantic partner through a creative hobby or outlet." And I literally was like, okay, that's literally manifested in my life, like literally to a T, because my partner and I met through Brazilian Zouk. And then not only that, it's flavored by Sagittarius, and he is of a different nationality than me. And like he speaks, he speaks Spanish fluently, and like I've been trying to learn Spanish to like be able to speak and everything, but definitely from a place of like inspiration. And I love that aspect about him, like I love that he comes from somewhere that like it's just so beautiful to like hear about where he comes from, and it's just a part of who he is, and so it's just wild that this has just been, it's literally manifested in my chart. I'm just like, what? It's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh. Yes. Okay, so I have something to say. So something that I think is really interesting is that, you have such strong energy in your fourth house. And it's like, it's funny because it's like you don't have to travel to explore like culturally, because there's like there's diversity of culture within your home life. And I don't know, that just seems so cool and like so important, honestly, for you, because it's like, yeah, the travel all the time doesn't really resonate, but it's like you honestly don't need to like constantly be pushing those horizons, because the close people in your life are already allowing you that opportunity. So it's like you've brought it all into your home. You've brought it all to you, which I think is just like, wow, that's crazy. And yeah, I mean, it's not a mistake, that experience happened to you in terms of like meeting your partner in your dancing environment. I mean, that's literally like cookie cutter astrology manifestation. Like you can't really, not much to say there. But yeah, thank you for sharing that anyway, and just thank you for giving us a window into that, because it's been so cool for me to experience that when I'm with you. And you just recommended a movie to me, Past Lives, and I ended up watching it and I loved it. And it was, I kind of like felt that, I kind of felt that. I was like, wow, they did a really great job of really sharing this culture with me that I had never even like remotely understood or even like had known anything about, but at the end I was like, wow, Korean culture is, wow, there's a lot there, and me and my partner were like, whoa, you know what I mean? So we've just been really, we were shocked, when you recommended that. We were like, wow, like this is a really good movie. And obviously like a lot of other people thought so too. I think it's won a lot of awards, but it was kind of like that immersion experience. And I was like, oh, I obviously just love this movie. I totally get it. I totally get it.
And that was literally the piece of it that I loved the most, was how much like the Korean culture was coming through. I just think it's so, I don't know. I love seeing other cultures. I really do. And I love the piece that you said about, it's kind of like I have it in my life, so I don't need to like go see it all the time, because it's so true. I mean, I experience it when I go out to eat with my friends. Like even just like them taking me to like certain grocery stores that are like all Asian food. It's like literally like I walked into one and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a cultural immersion for me. And I was like a kid in a candy store. Like I was like, this is so cool. I was like, I've never even seen all of this food and I want to try it. And like, it was just like, oh, it just like lit me up. And that's just really speaks to, though, like these are just my experiences that I'm meant to have just like for me. And it's like, I'm not meant to like turn it into a career or something like that. You know what I mean? And like that's really represented in my placements too, is like it's just like this is just for me. This is just the way that I like to experience and taste life. And it's just so crazy that that has been like so evident through my true sky chart. Like it's like what Lily said earlier, you just can't make it up. So, and again, this is really, I'm not trying to fit my life to my chart. I'm like, this is my life and my chart just happens to represent it. Like, and that's been the wildest thing about it. And so, yeah, it's just been this really beautiful unfolding, and I feel like I'm stepping into it even more so. And this isn't to say that like I don't want to travel and see new places in the world. Like I definitely still feel that to some degree, but it's really interesting because lately all the main traveling that I've been doing is actually for dance, for Zouk. And that feels better to me, is like traveling for a dance festival versus just traveling just because. I mean, not saying that I'll never travel just because, but I don't know, it just feels more purposeful to me, which is also a very Sagittarian thing, to do things with purpose. But it's also just like having that Venus placement in Sagittarius and like having dance. It's just so represented through my hobby, which is really cool.
I love how you've taught me about the moon sign as it being really just for you, because I never knew that before. And I've been really thinking about, it's reminding me of my own moon placement and how that's just for me. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up again. One other thing that I wanted to touch on is your cultural roots and how you may or may not feel connected to them. And if you feel comfortable sharing, what are they?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay, so I'm Italian. For those listening, my last name, if you follow me on Instagram, you probably think my last name is Monteggia, but it's Monteggia. It's Italian. And yeah, it's so interesting that you bring this up, because this is something that I've been being guided to dive into more. I just like haven't fully, but I do have direct relatives in Italy that I've actually visited before. However, they literally do not speak English. They live in a very non-tourist town. It is very authentic Italy. And yeah, my grandpa on my dad's side was 100% Italian. He died when I was a baby, but he actually died in Italy, and he didn't live there at the time. And so that was pretty crazy that he actually passed there. And I've actually stood in the spot where he died. And that was a very surreal experience for me. To Yeah, and I feel very connected to my grandma on that side, who has passed. She's come through to me a lot on my spiritual journey. She's actually 100% Polish, though. She's not Italian. But my Italian roots have definitely come up. And there's something that, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't dove into them as much as I feel like probably will in this life, but I definitely know that at some point I need to go back. And specifically to where my relatives are again. And I don't know what that experience will bring, but all I know is that I need to learn to speak the language before I go, because that's what they told me last time I was there.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm currently learning Spanish. But like I would love to eventually learn Italian, at least a little bit one day too. So yeah, we'll see. And that's really representative too of like the fourth house is ancestry, and diving really deep into that. And being that I have my sun and my North Node there, that's actually something that's come up for me quite a bit.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I did know that you were Italian. Nothing like so is it your aunt and uncle that are there, or is it another set of grandparents?
No, so it's relatives on my dad's side. So basically all of his cousins that live there. And my grandma and grandpa on my dad's side have passed though. But it's mainly comes from my grandpa was 100% Italian. So yeah, it's really interesting. I always like wish that he didn't die when I was so young, because the stories that I've heard of him, like he was so Italian. And it was just, I would have just loved to gotten to experience like being around him. But maybe I'll get that one day by going back and visiting the culture again, and tapping deeper into my roots there. That's so interesting, because I just pulled a card from the Rose Oracle deck this morning that was about tapping into my ancestry.
Well, you've heard it twice today.
So we'll see. That's still something that I have yet to tap deeper into, but it's there for sure.
Yeah, I was just curious because, yeah, I know that you're Italian, and it's really, I have also kind of distinct ancestry as well. as I guess most people do, but I think that some people connect more to it than other people. And so I was just kind of curious where you were in that kind of spectrum just because of how culturally connected you are in your like day-to-day life. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, I'm feeling really good about this. Is there anything else that you would like to share in terms of kind of sharing with the listeners specifically as they maybe dive into their chart, or just any advice that you might have for Scorpios, maybe? Something like that? Anything that comes through around those things would be great to hear from you.
Advice for Scorpios is, I would say, like, your intensity is your superpower. And that's something that I'm learning. And just, I would say, advice in general with adapting to this system is let all the emotions come up. I was really angry when I found this system, believe it or not. I didn't want to believe it. That's okay. You can push it away. You can not want to dive into it, but what I will say is, like, if you will feel the resonance, and if you feel the resonance, like, let yourself be curious and let yourself go down that road because it's for a reason. All of these tools that we use, astrology, human design, even like tarot cards, they're tools for us. They're meant to help us in our journey in some way. They're meant to empower us. And learning my chart, as you guys now know, has been very empowering for me. It really has. I really feel like allowed me to allow myself to, like, step into more of who I am, but truly, like, from an authentic place, like, not trying to be this way, is like really just allowing myself to be who I am. So I would say, like, if you feel the resonance like I did, usually your body will tell you, just listen to it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And the whole time that you were talking, I was just feeling like saying yes to your spiritual path can look different for everyone. But I think for you, a big way that you've said yes to your spirituality is through True Sky. I feel that for you. And it's so Scorpio of you.
It is, because Scorpios like to go off the beaten path. They don't like to do what's mainstream. Like, they like to talk about the things that aren't mainstream because they like to kind of push the edges and, like, piss people off a little bit. Not that I'm trying to piss people off, but it's interesting. Like, I do have that energy of, like, yeah, let's go off the beaten path. And, like, not because I'm just trying to go off the beaten path. It's like my energy just goes there. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for saying that.
Yes. Okay. This was so great. I always learn so much whenever we talk about astrology. And thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us in terms of Scorpio embodiment, but also different placements and charts that people can really kind of pinpoint to their own, really. So thank you again for this. And if you have any thoughts or questions, email the show. Email the show. Let us know what you think. Reach out to us on Instagram. We love to hear from you. And as we're sharing these like very personal transitions, we love to connect as well with you if you're experiencing something similar or have something top of mind that you want to reflect on. So reach out to us. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.